rush to the border. We'll break it down by the numbers. More Americans slip into poverty, a brutal cycle hard to break out of, especially for single mothers. Tonight we meet a family whose mom might even be carrying your mail. Her remarkable story of strength.
Fortune comes in many things, and mostly they're people.
Did you know that Norway sells way more electric cars per capita than the U.S.? Norway. We're gonna crush those losers. Crush them!
And as more motor companies race ahead to try to help save the planet, Ginger Z gives us a closer look at what needs to happen here in the U.S. to really go electric, as Gio Benitez becomes one of the first to take a test ride in a reimagined classic.
Well, it feels like a Mustang, that's for sure.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. It has been a long week in Washington. For many, it's also been an emotional one after several days of graphic videos reminding us all of what happened at the U.S. Capitol January 6th, as if we could have possibly forgotten. At times, senators had to look away from the screen or paced around the chamber as each side made their case. Tonight, the unprecedented second impeachment trial of former President Trump now in its final phase. Trump's lawyers had the opportunity to argue their case for 16 hours. Instead, they only used about 3. His legal team really tried to make the point that when the president told his supporters to fight, it was just a political speech, not a call for them to actually storm the Capitol. After the president's defense finished their argument, senators spent hours submitting written questions that were then answered immediately. Then a rare moment of unity, a standing ovation on both sides of the aisle in the Senate as Officer Eugene Goodman entered the chamber as the Senate passed legislation to award him with a Congressional Gold Medal. Our congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has been following the trial all week and leads us off again tonight.
On day 4, former President Donald Trump's defense team getting their turn, accusing Democrats of using impeachment as an act of political vengeance, calling the charge of insurrection a monstrous lie.
This unprecedented effort is not about Democrats opposing political violence. It is about Democrats trying to disqualify their political opposition.
Warning the senators serving as jurors that convicting a former elected official for their past political speech could set a dangerous precedent, zeroing in on the former president's use of the word fight.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Insisting fight is, quote, ordinary political rhetoric, playing an 11-minute montage of Democrats' own words, including senators in the chamber today.
Our fight. We are in this fight for our lives.
What we have to do right now is fight as hard as we can.
Suddenly, the word fight is off limits. Spare us the hypocrisy and false indignation.
Democrats objected to the video, saying this is hardly the same thing, and that their words were never delivered to a mob ready to act.
None of us were saying that to a mob on the day of the presidential vote certification, so I don't think it's apples to apples.
The defense arguing that the House managers selectively edited their evidence, admitting the one time the president used the word peacefully.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
But House managers did address that word in making their case, saying he only used it once and urged his supporters to fight more than a dozen times in that one speech. Still, his defense argued today, this is not incitement.
No thinking person could seriously believe that the president's January 6th speech on the ellipse was in any way an incitement to violence or insurrection.
Trump's team used just 2.5 hours of their 16 hours allotted to defend the president.
Let us be clear. This trial is about far more than President Trump. It is about silencing and banning the speech the majority does not agree with. It is about canceling 75 million Trump voters and criminalizing political viewpoints.
After the president's team made their case, the next phase of this trial, the senators acting as jurors late today getting to ask their own questions.
Mr. President, I send a question to the desk.
Republicans and Democrats both asking, when did the president know the Capitol had been breached? And what did he do to stop it?
The reason this question keeps coming up is because the answer is nothing.
There were also questions about Vice President Mike Pence, his safety, and whether President Trump ever did anything to protect him. House managers already showing that never-before-seen video of Pence being whisked away to safety, where he and his family were being held to protect them from rioters shouting, "Hang Mike Pence." The managers pointed to a phone call as all this was happening shortly after 2 p.m. on that day. President Trump calling Senator Tommy Tuberville. Tuberville told the president that the vice president had just been taken out, that he was being rushed to safety. They say about 20 minutes later, the president tweeted questioning Mike Pence's courage. And Mitt Romney wanted to know more.
I send a question to the desk.
So he asked, did the former president know his vice president had been whisked to safety, even as he tweeted questioning his own vice president? Senator Mitt Romney of Utah asking about this tweet from Trump at 2:24 p.m. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what needed to be done.
Was he aware that Vice President had been removed from the Senate by the Secret Service for his safety?
The lead House manager answering, saying the president had been told on that call the vice president was in harm's way. And still he tweeted, questioning Pence's courage 20 minutes later.
Senator Tuberville specifically said that he told the president, "Mr. President, they just took the vice president out. I've got to go." The vice president and his family were still in danger at that point. Our commander-in-chief did nothing.
The defense team claims the president did not know about his vice president.
The answer is no. At no point was the president informed the vice president was in any danger, because the House rushed through this impeachment in 7 days with no evidence. There is nothing at all in the record on this point.
Arguing the question is not relevant to this case.
To be clear, this is an article of impeachment for incitement. This is not an article of impeachment for anything else.
And late today, the president's defense team arguing impeaching the president for his words violates the First Amendment. The House managers arguing that is not the case.
The former president is not going to spend 1 hour or 1 minute in jail. This is about protecting our republic and articulating and defining the standards of presidential conduct. And if you want this to be a standard for totally appropriate presidential conduct going forward, be my guest, but we're headed for a very different kind of country at that point.
Rachel Scott joins us now from the Capitol once again. Rachel, former President Trump's defense far shorter than the case that was made against him. How was that received in the chamber? And any new tea leaves as far as how the senators who've been on the fence were reacting today?
Well, Lindsay, I was in the chamber not too long ago, and I spotted Republican Senator Bill Cassidy. He seemed to be in deep thought, had a lot on his mind as he was pacing back and forth during that question and answer period. He moved from having his hands on his face to hands in his pocket, really seemed to be in deep thought about how to move forward here. He is one of the 6 Republicans that voted to move forward with the trial. He's one of the handful that seem to be keeping an open mind here. Bottom line, though, at the end of the day, Democrats still need that number. 17 Republicans in order to convict former President Donald Trump. Right now, that still seems unlikely, Lindsay.
And just explain for us what we can expect as far as tomorrow is concerned and how soon this process could be completed.
This is really moving at a rapid pace, Lindsay. So tomorrow we can expect to see the final arguments. Each side has up to 2 hours to make their case. That tees up a final vote on conviction as early as tomorrow afternoon, Lindsay. This is far shorter than the 21 days that impeachment trial played out the first time around for Donald Trump.
Right, a fraction of the time. Rachel Scott, thanks so much as always. Let's go now to our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl. John, what's your takeaway from that question period and the responses from both sides and what it might mean as far as where this vote is likely headed?
Well, honestly, Lindsay, the biggest takeaway is that members of Congress, as a rule of thumb, are generally just awful at asking questions. These were questions that were not designed, for the most part, to elicit new information, but simply to basically give each side an opportunity to restate arguments they had already made. And looking at these, you saw Republicans, for the most part, ask questions of the defense designed to reinforce what the defense had already said. That seems to me to be a very clear indication that the Republicans are headed towards acquittal. There were a couple of exceptions. Mitt Romney asked a very pointed question about when the president knew, then the former president, now Donald Trump, when he knew that Mike Pence was in danger, and did he know it before he tweeted, that Pence lacked courage. But for the most part, these questions didn't seem designed to illuminate anything new.
And give us your reaction to how the president's team handled his case, and any sense of how the former president is reacting at this moment and what he plans to do next.
Well, the defense seemed to be arguing against an almost entirely different case. The thrust of their case was that Donald Trump did not incite the mob in his speech on January 6th, in the speech that day, because there had obviously been pre-planning. That was part of what the manager said. What they ignored is the fact that the managers stretched out a case where the incitement began long before January 6th. That January 6th was a culmination of weeks and weeks of incitement by Donald Trump building up to that moment. As for Donald Trump's plans, it's remarkable, Lindsay. We have seen and heard almost nothing from Donald Trump since January 20th when he left Washington. But I am told he is eager to reemerge, eager to reassert what he believes is his role as the leader of the Republican Party. I expect that you will see him make a public appearance very soon after this trial is over, that he will declare victory on what he expects will be the acquittal, and that he will get to work very quickly, with the very first priority being getting revenge on Republicans that defied him during this process.
It's still odd not really hearing from him on social media these days. Jonathan Karl.
It's amazing. Our
thanks to you. And let's bring in ABC News contributor and former senator from North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. You were a member of the Senate just 3 years ago. What do you make of the case that the House managers presented to the Senate over the last few days and the rebuttal from the former president's team?
Well, there's no doubt the president was clearly out-lawyered. The unfortunate part of that is this wasn't a legal proceeding where you had a judge and judges were ruling on objections or saying you're not responsive to the question. And so it becomes about politics. It becomes about the lack of courage, I think, for people who sat in that chamber, who listened to evidence. Number one, a great legal argument to begin with on why constitutionally this process is correct and should go forward. And then a factual case that was absolutely riveting and appropriate. And then this very lackluster, really horribly advanced case today by the president's lawyers. And unfortunately, the winner is not going to be the best lawyer. The winner is going to be the people who presented a political argument that falls on political ears. And, that's really unfortunate because I agree with the House managers that this will set a horrible precedent moving forward for behavior of a commander-in-chief.
Of course, the Senate is much smaller than the House of Representatives. There's only 100 senators. So is it safe to say that you all know each other well and fraternize on some level? Today, of course, one senator asked specifically about Vice President Pence being in danger and whether or not the then President Trump knew. How much more personal is this impeachment due to the nature of the current relationships in the Senate and those outside of it with people like Mike Pence?
Well, I think no doubt that there will be people disappointed. There's people in the back of the room saying, really, can't you just agree that it's time to move beyond Donald Trump? Let's get this impeachment done. There's people on the other side saying, look, this is going to further divide us. And they're all making their arguments. But the bottom line is where I think the president's lawyers really fell down was in response to Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins' question, which was really designed to get a counterpoint, which was, when did the president know that the Capitol had been breached? And the answer was, well, they didn't present evidence of this. But think about this. You have the lawyers standing there for the President of the United States and unwilling to make an answer to that question, which no one believes that the president did not know when he sent out the tweet that Mike Pence was in danger.
Yesterday, we had Senator Kevin Cramer on our show, who's also, of course, from North Dakota. I want to play some sound from him giving his thoughts on whether or not this kind of violence was foreseeable.
I don't think it was foreseeable. I think when you look at the whole, the wholeness of President Trump's 4 years, his rhetoric, his rallies, the use of words, nobody foresaw, he certainly didn't foresee that there would be violence as a part of it.
So same question now to you. Do you think that this level of violence due to President Trump's rhetoric was foreseeable? And do you think that Senator Kramer's opinion is widely shared by your fellow North Dakotans?
Absolutely. Well, it's probably shared by many North Dakotans, but quite honestly, it's wrong. The language that he used had, in fact, in the past incited violence. He had rewarded violence with favorable tweets. He had told us that the people marching in Charlottesville, there were good people on both sides. This is a long pattern of behavior. And it goes to the machismo that the president likes to exert. You have to be strong. I mean, he told his supporters, you have to be strong. If you're weak, you're not going to make it. And so this is a ridiculous thing to say. Of course, the language incites violence, and of course, it was predictable. In fact, Lindsay, I got in a little trouble with some people on the right when I suggested on Election Day, when they actually certified the election a week after the vote, that there was going to be violence at some point. I think it was completely predictable. The only question we should be asking is, why weren't we better prepared for it?
Senator Heidi Heitkamp, thank you so much, as always, for talking to us. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Our senior Washington correspondent Terry Moran joins us now. Terry, big picture on this. Did the House managers do enough to make their case? And what do you make of them not calling any witnesses to testify as part of these proceedings? Was that a missed opportunity?
Lindsay, I think the House managers rose to the moment. They may not win this case. It looks like they aren't going to in the Senate. But in the course of history, they prepared, they organized, they marshaled their facts, and they put them forward with dignity and eloquence in a way that I think will make the case in history. It is a very powerful case. It is one of the worst things that ever happened to this country, and they approached it that way. President Trump's lawyers played for the moment. They played to the base. They had that kind of contemptuous almost tone at times, the tone that Donald Trump likes, just kind of trashing the other side. They made legal arguments at odds with the precedents of the Senate, but in the end, I think they reassured senators, and those who weren't reassured were warned that the base is still with Donald Trump. However, for both sides and for the American people, the lack of witnesses, that's a problem. Think how much more powerful it would be if there was one witness who could have been called and asked the question that Heidi Heitkamp was just talking about. What did President Trump do when he saw the attack occur? And why did he wait so long? What did he say when people said, send help? That would have been a clincher one way or the other.
And of course, we still live in an extremely deeply divided country. Regardless of the outcome, what's your view on what this whole trial process will do for our discourse and political divide going forward?
I do think it puts a period on this first Trump era. If there is a second one, then we'll live through that, too. But I do think the country's ready to move on. I think one of the reasons Joe Biden has, pretty decent approval ratings because he's not Donald Trump. And he's not trying to be. He's trying to calm the waters, and most people look for that. On the other hand, the way the Trump defense was organized and presented was designed to stir up President Trump's loyalists and to give them hope that what he did was perfectly appropriate. He is still the most famous Republican in the country. He's the one with one call can raise $100 million. He is still the main Republican to reckon, and we have undoubtedly not heard the last from him. Lindsay?
Terry Moran, we thank you so much, as always. Joining us now is Cardozo Law Professor Deborah Pearlstein. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Professor. Now, the former president's legal team argued at length today that President Trump's speech January 6th was protected free speech under the First Amendment. Do you feel that they made that legal case in your mind?
So the legal case is interestingly rejected by lawyers on both sides of the aisle. That is to say, the notion that all speech is protected by the First Amendment, even the speech of the president, who has a constitutional duty to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, is a constitutional argument that's never really been made before. And you have prominent lawyers, both Democrats and Republicans, who have said it's not really supported by the Constitution. Just as the Supreme Court has long said, you can be prosecuted if you yell fire in a crowded theater, if you are actually actively endangering people. That same standard at a minimum applies to the president. But in fact, the president has a higher duty than most Americans, than all Americans, to, as the Constitution provides, take care that the law is faithfully executed. And if he had been the fire chief in that circumstance, he would have been fired. He would have lost his job. And this proceeding is not about depriving the president of his liberty. It's not about depriving the president of any property. It's simply about whether or not he deserves to hold the job or a job of public trust. And that's a really quite different question from the question that the First Amendment in the criminal context is designed to protect.
Now, if the Senate does convict, there's been a lot of discussion about barring the former president from future office. Majority Leader Schumer has not ruled out invoking the 14th Amendment. Has that process been used before, and is that something that could happen really under the Constitution?
So Section 3 of the 14th Amendment does say, and was adopted immediately after the Civil War, and it does say that those who have carried out an insurrection against the government of the United States can be barred from holding an office of public trust in the future. It was used in the context of the Civil War to go after the insurrectionists, to go after the Southern rebels, to prevent them from taking part in the new federal Congress after the war. It has not been used at all in the modern era in this way. So there is a significant open constitutional question if it can be applied in this setting, and if so, how. One of the ways in which it might actually eventually come up, whether or not Congress attempts to invoke it now, is if the president, the former president, ever does try to run for office again and get his name on a ballot, you may well see legal claims that say he should be barred from running again pursuant to the 14th Amendment. Now, whether or not that succeeds, either if invoked in court or by Congress in the first instance, is something that we've never faced. It's something that the courts have never decided before.
And it'll be interesting because on that night, Senator McConnell called it a failed insurrection. So still a matter, I guess, of semantics and by definition if it was an insurrection or not. Professor Perlstein, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And when we come back, the cross-country storm is bringing with them snow, ice, and brutal cold. Our weather team is tracking it all. The diabetes drug that may have significant impact for those who want to lose weight. But up next, the new CDC guidelines for the first time laying out how to reopen schools.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The heated debate over reopening schools continues, but today the CDC weighed in, providing what could be a safe solution for many parents, teachers, and children across the country. ABC's Whit Johnson brings us this report.
Tonight, the CDC unveiling their long-awaited roadmap for getting kids back in the classroom safely, a top priority for the Biden administration.
We are also going to be guided by science. We are going to be guided by our medical experts.
The CDC creating a nationwide color-coded system ranging from lower-risk blue zones up to red, the highest rate of community transmission. In blue and yellow zones, full in-person instruction is recommended, but in orange and red, hybrid or reduced attendance is encouraged, and only with strict enforcement of 6 feet of distance, and masks in all zones.
I want to underscore that the safest way to open schools is to ensure that there is as little disease as possible in the community.
The CDC also saying teachers should be vaccinated as soon as possible, but it's not a requirement to reopen schools, something many teachers have been asking for.
We're being asked to put ourselves on the line as frontline workers, but aren't being prioritized in the vaccination rollout in the way that many people think we should be.
The country's largest teachers union demanding more resources, calling the new guidelines a good first step, but now it's time for action. Millions of children have been out of the classroom for almost a year.
I want schools to be open, but I don't know when they are.
Single dad Sivaraj in San Francisco has seen the toll it's taken on his older son.
He's really struggled to find motivation in school. I mean, he's borderline depressed. He used to be an honor student, and his grades just dropped bottom.
In the race to vaccinate, today major pharmacies taking on a bigger role. 1 million doses sent to 6,500 locations across the country, part of a new federal program.
Some of the first doses are coming to this Walgreens in New York. People will check in at the counter, then they'll be escorted back here behind that door, and the vaccine will be administered in a private, comfortable space.
I want to get the vaccine because we are dying.
In Durham, North Carolina, 64-year-old Miss Marcella Thompson, an essential worker with health conditions, becoming the first in the country to get a shot at her local Walgreens.
I get my medication there. I buy my sundries there. Everybody knows Miss Marcella. It's a better advantage to the community when you can get the vaccine right at your local drugstore.
But tonight, new questions about the impact of the pandemic on the most vulnerable Americans. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo under fire, accused of covering up the state's true death toll in nursing homes. A top aide admitting that the governor's office withheld the numbers, saying they would be used against us by the Trump Justice Department. This after a recent report found the deaths were undercounted by as much as 50%.
Still some discrepancies that they're trying to sort out there. Whit Johnson joins us now from a CVS where they're doing some of those vaccinations. And with that federal program starting with 6,500 pharmacies, how soon will that be expanded?
Lindsay, that 6,500 number is really just the beginning. The federal program hopes to ramp things up throughout the spring to 40,000 drugstores across the country. And the good news for states, these vaccine doses will be in addition to what they're already getting. Lindsay?
These local pharmacies could be a game changer in the whole process. Whit Johnson, our thanks to you. Still ahead here on Prime, the cycle of poverty plunging hardworking Americans into homeless shelters. One mother's remarkable story of perseverance. Our sneak peek at the new electric Ford Mustang, what car companies are doing on the climate front. Ginger and Gio bring us this week's It's Not Too Late. And the new Biden administration policy aimed at the asylum seekers who were forced to remain in Mexico. We take a look by the numbers. But first, our post of the day, Justin Timberlake apologizing 17 years later to Janet Jackson for his role in that infamous Super Bowl halftime show back in 2004, and also to his former girlfriend, Britney Spears. We'll have more on this apology, years in the making, coming up later in the show.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march.
You will not replace us!
Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown Hate, The War Among Us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
24 hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, the Biden administration announced a program allowing asylum seekers who were forced to remain in Mexico under the Trump administration to begin to be admitted into the U.S. Let's take a look by the numbers. Next week, at 3 ports of entry, phase 1 of the new program will start processing migrants who have active asylum cases and have been waiting for their court date. About 25,000 migrants are estimated to be part of this category, and officials estimate that about 300 people could be processed per day at each point of entry once the program is up and running. Despite claims that asylum seekers disappear into the U.S. after their release, some 76% of asylum-seeking families attended all of their court hearings in the U.S., as according to a recent Syracuse University analysis. Attendance actually jumped to 99% for those with a lawyer to help them navigate the process. An average of 3,000 migrants were arrested per day for unauthorized entry at the southern border in January, according to data from Customs and Border Protection. Now, that's raised concerns that a rollback of Trump immigration policies could lead to a rush on the border. But the Biden administration has warned migrants that only eligible individuals will be allowed legal entry. Meanwhile, an effort in the Senate may also be renewed to grant legal status to some 400,000 foreign nationals living in the U.S. under temporary protected status, who the Trump administration sought to make eligible for deportation. Those with temporary protected status have been displaced from their home countries due to armed conflict, natural disaster, or other circumstances that risk their safety. And still lots ahead here tonight on Prime. We'll have more on the president's defense and his impeachment trial. How will the senators vote? And the fake heiress who duped banks, hotels, and New York's elite is out of prison earlier than expected. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Big hug,
We tell all our patients how much they're loved. We hold their hands.
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
On day 4, former President Donald Trump's defense team getting their turn.
It's a deliberate attempt by the Democrat Party to smear, censor, and cancel.
The defense accusing House impeachment managers of manufacturing evidence against Trump to boost their case that the twice impeached former president is singularly responsible for the deadly January 6th insurrection.
They cut off the video before they showed you the president's optimistic, patriotic words that followed immediately after.
Trump's attorneys using their own selectively edited video montage, taking both the former president and Democrats out of context.
Ready to throw a punch. You have to be ready to throw a punch.
Donald Trump, I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
The defense lawyer's case hinging on 3 main arguments: that the trial lacks due process, it's unconstitutional, and that Trump's words before the deadly insurrection amount to everyday political rhetoric, using a more than 9-minute sequence of Democrats using the word fight to try to make their point.
We're going to fight, and we're going to continue to fight.
I am going to be fighting. It's a word people use, but please stop the hypocrisy.
It is not often you see a winter storm watch all the way to the Mexican border and the Gulf of Mexico, but that's exactly what we have on the map. Parts of the Gulf of Mexico, the western Gulf of Mexico, only see impactful winter weather like this once a decade or so. Now, I want to track those storms and time it out. Portland and Seattle getting slammed. They're both under winter storm warning. Going to be very difficult to travel there. Tomorrow, D.C. starts in the morning with the freezing rain. You could see that accumulate in southern New Jersey, a mix, New York to snow to the north, and then that one, Sunday night. The panhandle of Texas, we're talking a half foot to almost a foot in some places. Dallas could see some snow, and that's the pink, the ice, all the way to Houston. Houston could see some of its coldest February temperatures in 70 years.
A new study in the New England Journal of Medicine finds a drug for type 2 diabetes also helps patients who are overweight or obese lose weight. Semaglutide increases insulin production while also suppressing your appetite. Researchers found the weekly injectable drug helped patients lose 15% of their body weight. The drug is FDA approved as a diabetes drug. The drug maker is now asking for approval for weight loss.
Justin Timberlake is apologizing to singers Britney Spears and Janet Jackson. Timberlake dated Spears in the early 2000s, ending with a messy breakup and hit single, launching his solo career. Timberlake then performed with Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl halftime show. 17 years later, people still talk of the moment he ripped off a part of her costume, exposing her breast.
In a lengthy social media post, the singer says that he made mistakes in the past that contributed to, quote, a system that condones misogyny and racism. Timberlake says he is deeply sorry for times when he spoke out of turn or didn't speak up for what was right. He didn't offer any specific examples, however. His apology comes after the releases of the documentary framing Britney Spears.
A woman convicted of paying for a lavish lifestyle by impersonating a wealthy German heiress has been released from a New York prison. Anna Sorokin, who went by the name Anna Delvey, was freed on parole yesterday. In April of 2019, a jury found the 29-year-old guilty of grand larceny and other charges. Prosecutors said she tricked people into believing she was an heiress with a multi-million-dollar fortune. They said she used the funds to cover her high-end clothing, luxury hotel stays, and transatlantic travel.
Upon her release, Sorkin took to social media, posting this black and white pic with her signature oversized shades. The caption, "Prison is so exhausting, you wouldn't know."
Her life story now the subject of an upcoming Netflix series.
Welcome back. So many families over the past year have been thrust into poverty or even homelessness because of the harsh economic toll of the pandemic. Some parents with full-time jobs still struggling to keep a roof over their families' heads. Our Kira Phillips meets one of these families fighting to survive and their new reason for hope.
God provides. Every day, 16-year-old Martasia tells her mom, God will provide. Now you finally see what God can do. And that this road she travels down now will provide for her and her 5 daughters. Every week, Alicia Carter delivers mail to homes in Maryland's Prince George's County. Homes in one of the nation's wealthiest black communities. The kind of home Alicia Carter dreams of. Because right now, this mail carrier doesn't even have one.
I was so shocked to find out you were a mail carrier.
Yeah.
And you're homeless. I mean, this pandemic doesn't discriminate.
Nope, not on anyone.
What do you want people to know about that? Just the reality of how hard you work. Sometimes it doesn't matter at the moment.
It don't, because I had several good jobs, you know, but during this time, just keep working. Just kept working and not giving up. To have a job, a good job at that, and then still be homeless was like, what am I doing wrong?
Just keep working, not giving up. From Alicia's mouth to God's ears.
Alicia, why didn't you want to tell anybody at the post office that you were homeless?
I'm more independent. I really don't like more like handouts or someone feeling pity for me. Just a sense of wanting to have to get it on my own.
A commitment to this family that will take this unwavering mom and mail carrier down a surprising route to reinvention.
Fortune comes in many things, and mostly they're people.
How are you?
With random acts of kindness that will help get her there. There are more than 13 million single parents in the U.S. 80% of those parents are single moms. This pandemic has ravaged already poverty-stricken cities like Baltimore, hitting people of color, particularly black single moms like Alicia, the hardest. Her bills piled up, and she just couldn't make rent. So this hotel became their home. And when the money ran out...
You all lived in the car together?
We would all sit in one seat. She would sit in the middle, Paige sit by the door, I sit by the door, and the twins would lay on our laps.
How did you do it?
I don't know. We just piled up.
How did you survive that?
It really didn't, not say bother them. It hurt me more. So as long as we all was together, they was happy.
Not being judged, a little tougher.
Like at the moment, we didn't have much shoes, so we would wear each other's shoes. We would wear each other's clothes. We would wear the same clothes. Like we would have to I don't know. It was a lot. Had to go to school and then have friends that be like, oh, if you ever need anything, but you didn't really want to say anything because you didn't want them to make fun of you or.
It's okay.
I don't know.
But Martasia's classmates didn't make fun of her. They rallied around her and gave her hope. A family shelter that would help take them to a place they never expected.
Alicia, has living in this shelter made you and the girls stronger?
Yes, family-wise, We closer to each other, got to spend a lot of quality time together, get to learn each other better, emotional, physically, and mentally.
Like Martasia, she became more outspoken. Terziah, grateful.
What's your favorite thing about your mom?
She's always there for us.
Maya, more outgoing. Her twin Mariah,
I like chocolate.
and Akira.
So I hear from your sisters and your mom, you're kind of the second mom. Is that true?
Yes.
How did you get them all to do their schoolwork? That's what I want to know.
I had to make it interesting, because usually the teachers would just give them paper and like, you had to do this, they pick the ordinary work for their grade level. But you had to make it fun in some type of way for them to actually sit still and do it.
She wants to be a lawyer.
You know what? That's pretty awesome.
Family and fortitude. Things money just can't buy. A resilience that resonated with Linda Wilson.
You're the one that rides up and down here all the time? Oh my gosh.
Remember that neighbor we met back on Alicia's route?
When I was 20, I was a little lost child like many of us are.
She too was once homeless, helped by a total stranger.
I walked into a store, she fed me and actually took me home and, you know, sort of propped me up and enabled me to keep going. Just to help you.
Thank you. Oh my God.
I've been there and, you know, hey, if we can grab joy anywhere we can.
Alicia understands that because her family's joy never stopped either.
There are a lot of families falling apart right now because of the hard times this country's going through. But this family is stronger, is closer. Why do you think that is, Mom?
I always felt like people that had stuff handed to them, they don't value it. So, you know, when you go through a struggle together with your family, it makes you stronger.
Happy birthday! Every dark place always has a light or something that just brings light to you. Don't underestimate yourself.
Proving that sometimes struggles can be serendipitous. And if there were nothing to struggle for, nothing would be achieved. Welcome to the Carter family's new home.
I love them.
Having your own, cooking for your family, that's something, you know, you want to do on your own.
Strong will that got this family out of the shelter and into a home they can now call their own.
What was it Alicia did that made her story successful?
She actually never lost sight of who she was as a mom and as a woman. She continued to maintain employment. She followed through with appointments. She got the documentation she needed to get connected to housing. She definitely did her part, which shows where she is now.
So what's next? What is next for this beautiful family?
Happy times. Home-cooked meals. More tacos.
More tacos.
Yeah,
I want to come over.
And savoring Martasia's sweet sounds of that spiritual promise. Kira Phillips, ABC News, Baltimore.
Happier times, and we are grateful for that happy ending. Our thanks to Kira for that. In Norway, the future may be now in the push to adopt electric cars, and a Super Bowl ad with Will Ferrell brought that into sharp focus this past weekend. In this week's It's Not Too Late, our Ginger Z looks at what Norway is doing right and if it could work here. Plus, our Gio Benitez gives us an exclusive look into Ford's hottest new electric car.
Hi, I'm Ginger Z, and it's not too late. Last week, we broke down the state of the electric vehicle here in our country. It isn't quite there yet, but this week, we are getting inside Ford's new all-electric Mustang. Most importantly, though, we're going to show you how some countries and companies are leading the charge. Get it? The charge? Anyway, thankfully, Will Ferrell kind of served up some of the electric info just recently in the GM Super Bowl ad.
Did you know that Norway sells way more electric cars per capita than the U.S.? Norway. We're gonna crush those losers.
Crush them!
Those losers are actually one of the countries that are winning the worldwide race to electrify. In Norway, in 2020, 54% of all the vehicles that were purchased were electric. 12% of the country already drives electric. They are global leaders, and they have a great sense of humor. Look what they had to say to Will Ferrell and GM.
Holy mackerel, the Americans are coming, and Will Ferrell does not look happy.
What do we do?
We have to make a public apology. Of course, we shouldn't have become the leading country in the world when it comes to electrical vehicles without checking with you first. And we fully understand that you want to punch us in the face.
All jokes aside, we wanted to get the scoop on what's happening in Norway and maybe learn a few lessons.
This hasn't happened in Norway because we are more environmentally friendly than in the US. It's not like Norwegians are more green. So it has nothing to do with this. It has to do with a political program and incentives and politics to get us there. This transition is happening now, and for the US, it's all about taking part in this transition.
Some global competition is not a bad thing because climate change is a global problem, and we all have to be a part of it. The race for the best electric vehicle technology is really just beginning. 17 countries have announced 100% zero-emission vehicle targets through 2050. The number of electric cars and light vehicles worldwide is expected to multiply by 15 by the year 2030. But we all know that you can't just make a bunch of EVs if they have no way of getting fueled up. We desperately have to catch up, not just in the production of the cars, but like Norway, we have to get that charging station infrastructure in too. Norway has charging stations all the way into the far north. That's an area with more reindeer than people.
With some support from government and local power companies, they started rolling out infrastructure last summer and already have 14 stations up. So my colleagues did this really cool test with 5 different electric cars in minus 20 degrees.
Globally, the number of publicly accessible chargers increased by 60% in 2019 compared to 2018, so that's big. China is the one leading in the rollout of those publicly accessible chargers. So you might be wondering, okay, so we got to do it here, but when we do it, can our power grid handle the sudden increase in charge? And at the end of the day, if we're still charging, isn't that a greenhouse gas emission if it burns with coal?
The grid has gotten about 33% cleaner over the last 10 years, while gasoline has remained the same old dirty gasoline. The grid can handle this, and it's not going to be a switch that's flipped overnight. As this gets ramped up, local grids that are seeing a lot of increase will plan accordingly.
And in the race to electrify transportation here in the U.S., we have a little bit of something that other countries don't. More than 100 years of car production experience. ABC's transportation correspondent, my friend Gio Benitez, got an exclusive look at one of the most anticipated American EVs coming out this year.
Hey there, Ginger. Right now we are with a brand new Ford Mustang Mach-E. No doubt about it, it is a beautiful car. I'll let you in on a little secret. This is going to be my first time driving any electric vehicle. So let's take it for a spin. Here we go. As we roll out, there's a clear difference between an electric vehicle and one powered by gas. It's very quiet, it's very, very smooth. And I noticed something else. You don't have to hit the brakes to slow down. And I don't know if it's necessarily a setting, but it's very cool how it just instantly starts stopping as you let go of the gas. But I guess you can't call it the gas pedal anymore because it ain't gas. It turns out it is a setting you can turn off. Then there's the question of how fast can it go? You can just feel this thing has power, it's ready to go. In fact, Ford says the Mach-E and top trim can go from 0 to 60 in just 3.5 seconds, as fast as top sports cars. The race to get more of them on the market is heating up, from startups like Rivian and Atlas to the big names like GM, Ford, and Volkswagen to Tesla's wild Cybertruck. And there's a presidential push. President Biden announcing his plans to convert the entire federal fleet, more than 640,000, to electric.
Why? Because it's affordable, because it's clean, because in many cases it's cheaper.
General Motors also announcing it plans to stop making gas and diesel cars and SUVs by 2035. Ford also says it's investing billions in electrification, saying this Mach-E is paving the way for the company. We pulled over to chat with Ford's Darren Palmer about their plan. What do you tell the family, Darren, that wants to get on that great American road trip, but they're concerned, hey, can I do this really in an electric vehicle?
We put together the largest charging network in America, specifically for this car. And you type in where you want to go, the car works out where the fast chargers are, and it routes you to those.
EV prices are starting to go down. This Mach-E starts at $42,000. Other automakers have some starting at $31,000. And for some buyers, there are federal tax credits. Listen, I don't need to tell you, this country is a truck and SUV country. And that's one of the reasons why electric vehicles haven't necessarily taken off just yet, right?
We looked for which part of the market we can serve the most with, and SUVs being so popular because of the utility they give for you and your families, that's why we selected this segment.
Less than 2% of all new vehicles sold in the U.S. are electric right now. Jessica Caldwell is following the trends at Edmunds. While she's seeing more excitement, she says there are still hurdles.
We need infrastructure to be in place to be a lot better, to make it easier and faster for people to charge. If everyone was to suddenly own an electric vehicle, what would that do to the power grid? Could it support it?
I can't get over how smooth this is. Despite these obstacles, as I hit the road for this test drive, well, it feels like a Mustang, that's for sure. Experts think we are on the brink of something big, and America is on the road to a more electric future. Ginger?
Gio, I have to agree. That Ford Mach-E is just the start of so many new Earth-friendly cars here in the U.S. I'm Ginger Z, and I promise it's not too late.
Gio seems like he is electrified and sold on that new Mustang. Our thanks to both Ginger and Gio. When we return, something that Republicans and Democrats can both get behind.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
But to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Before we go tonight, our image of the day. Something you don't see very often, a rare moment of unity, a standing ovation for Officer Eugene Goodman, the hero officer who steered the senators away from danger on January 6th. All 100 senators agreeing to pass legislation to give him the Congressional Gold Medal. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great weekend.